Hey friends, welcome back to Acre Homestead. My name is Becky and today it's June 6th. No, it's June 26th. And we are gonna do a garden tour this morning. It's actually 6:45 in the morning right now. And I'm out here so early because it's supposed to be 112 degrees. I live just north of Portland, Oregon, about 10 minutes. I live in Washington State and these are record highs we're supposed to be having. The hottest ever recorded here is 109. So getting into a heat wave, and so I figured I better get out here early to show you the garden tour. This is gonna be the first summer garden tour and I can't be more excited to share it with you. But before we get into the garden tour today, I had a few thoughts about building relationships with local food producers in your area. Now, I can't grow all my own food here, even though I do have a big garden and you guys see my grocery hauls, you know that I still have to buy things and inputs in order to keep us alive, basically. And this kind of got my wheels turning as I was thinking about this. In the homestead community, I think sometimes we get caught up in the idea of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, sustainability, and all those things are absolutely great. The more self-reliant we can be, that's awesome. But nobody, even if you own 100 acres, have a dairy cow, have a 5-acre garden, and produce all your own honey, you still have to rely on outputs in order to sustain your homestead. I kind of want to start a hashtag, and it'll actually officially begin in August. It's going to be Acre Homestead Local Food Movement. And the idea is to start building relationships with local food producers in your area. I cannot produce all my own fruits and vegetables on this property. You guys have seen I bought strawberries because we love strawberry jam, and I can't grow a year's worth of strawberries in order to make the amount of strawberry jam I need. I don't produce any of my own meat. We do have chickens, but meat and dairy are something that I can't produce in this area. And there was a very profound moment that kind of made my mind shift with this, is I read 2 books, Barbara Kilsoffer's Animal Vegetable Miracle and The Dirty Life. I've talked about both of these books before. I can link them down below if you're interested in them. I read these books when I lived in suburbia and I wasn't doing any gardening at all. I had the desire to do gardening. That was actually one of the things my husband and I had on our list when we were buying our first home, was an area for a garden. As first-time home buyers, we couldn't afford a place that had that, so that was a compromise we had to give up. And I read those 2 books, and those books sparked something in me. Even though I had the desire to grow some of my own food, that wasn't a reality for me, but what I could do is start building relationships and connections with people that were in my local community, and I could start filling my pantry and freezer with food that was local, and I knew the face behind the food. And while I was living in suburbia, I made this meal, and this meal sticks in my head, and it is a really profound moment for me. It was lamb shank from a lamb that I had purchased from a local rancher. The vegetables were all from a CSA that I was a part of, Community Supported Agriculture, and the dairy was from a local dairy. It was raw milk. I made this meal and I could actually picture the faces of the people that produced this food that was in my kitchen. And there's something very profound, intimate about that. We all have to eat 3 times a day, and wouldn't that be super awesome if we could start putting faces behind the food that comes into our house? So I want to start a hashtag, Acre Homestead Local Food Movement, and I'm going to officially launch this in August, and I'll make a whole video on it, and there'll be more details to come because I just started thinking about this idea. And I know that there's areas that I can improve on. I mean, if you see my grocery hauls, you know I shop at Walmart and I buy things at the grocery store, and there's no pressure with this. This is just a way to start getting us thinking about it. I know that we all have a budget we have to work in, and we all are in different places in life. But even if it means maybe just going to a farmer's market for the first time, or maybe going on a farm tour for the first time and just seeing what the local food movement in your area is, whether you can afford to buy half a cow at a time, or you can go to the farmer's market and buy a couple apples that are fresh. Whatever it means for you, I just think that it's super exciting to start having these conversations and start building community. That is where sustainability comes from, is building community with others. And I'm finding that with you guys in the comments. I am so enjoying getting to know you guys down there. I think Martin Luther King said it best: if you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But whatever you do, don't stop moving. And that's what I am trying to do with myself. I'm just trying to keep moving. I'm not perfect. I can't afford to buy everything organic. I can't afford to buy everything local, but I can look and research and see what I can do to maybe make little tweaks for big peaks in trying to be a little bit more local and maybe a little bit more sustainable at the same time. I wanted to bring this up before we get into the garden tour because I don't want you to ever look at my garden and where I am and get discouraged about where you might be. This took me a long time to get to this place, and I'm nowhere near where I ultimately want to be. I'm all about going back to basics, cooking from scratch, doing old-fashioned-y things, but I also think this is a good time to shift and start looking toward the future and looking toward the new and seeing how we can build community with local food and connecting with people, whether it's on social media or whatever it may be, actually going to farms and meeting the farmer that's producing food in your area. I think it's super exciting that we can start putting faces behind the people that produce the food that we eat every day. There's a very intimate relationship with that. I know that sounds a little floofy, but eating is what sustains life. And for someone to produce something that literally sustains life is a very intimate thing. And how awesome would it be to be able to build relationships with those people? So if you're excited about this idea, hit the thumbs up so that I know that we're onto something. And like I said, I'm gonna create a whole video getting closer to August because I wanna start this launching this hashtag in August, because that's when the big harvests come in. And that's when I'm gonna be going to my local farmer, going to my farmer's market and buying in bulk and putting those up to put in my pantry and in my freezer. But I just want you to start thinking about what maybe your goals might be, whether, like I said, going to the farmer's market for the first time, or maybe buying tomatoes in bulk when they're in season to can them or even freeze them or whatever it may be. So just let me know what you're thinking about this idea and if it's exciting to you, and let's go ahead and get into the garden tour. If this is your first garden tour, my house is here and you come around here to where my garden is. And right here we have the fig tree that has some figs on it. There's one right there. And I actually just harvested a bunch of leaves from this fig tree, and we are gonna be trying some tea this morning. I threw the leaves on the dehydrator. And then coming around, my beans are actually starting to climb, which is super awesome. I've never grown pole beans before. This trellis was supposed to be a loofah trellis, and I only had this one germinate, and it's been germinated for about a month now, and that's how big it is. So I don't think it's gonna amount to much. So I did throw some dragon tongue beans here, Blue Lake pole beans here, and I'm thrilled to see that they're starting to grow out and vine out, and hopefully soon they're gonna be growing up this trellis. I can't wait till I have a cascade of beans around here. My tomato trellises here, I could not be happier with how they're working for me. Last year, I did all my tomatoes on just posts like this, and toward the end of the season, they became a jungly mess, and it was very difficult to harvest the tomatoes. They got disease, couldn't prune them very well. But on here, I've been able to trellis them. Let me show you. I have this tomato plant right here, and all I have to do to trellis it is just like that, and now it's more secure. And I've been doing that to all of them, and I've been able to keep them really nice and pruned. After just saying that, I do have a bunch of tomato plants that are just gonna be tied up on posts. I actually ran out of T-posts, so I cut some wood that we had laying around and just am using these as posts. And I'm working really hard to keep them trellised up. I know probably here toward the end of the season is probably gonna be a jungly mess, and I am a little bit worried these might be a little bit flimsy and they might fall over, but we're just gonna see what happens. Last time you were in this bed, there was a bunch of cilantro along that edge that bolted. I did actually take that cilantro up because it was kind of dying and not producing seeds like I wanted it to. Over there, I have a bunch of cilantro that has gone to flower, and I'm gonna get coriander from it. But the cilantro along here just seemed to die, and so I figured I'm just gonna pull that up. And then I have carrots in here that are gonna probably be ready to harvest in a few weeks. The greens look a little bit short because I had a bunny in here that ate a bunch of the greens. The only other thing you're gonna notice in here that's a little bit weird are these onion scraps. I'm doing an experiment with these onion scraps. I'm like a compost in place experiment. When I harvested my leeks, and I do have a video on that, on how I preserve them, I threw all the scraps in the bed. It was a huge pile of scraps, and I figured I was gonna come later and pick up all those scraps and throw it in the compost bin. But within a month or two, they had completely decomposed and there were no remnants of onion scraps at all. From what I understand, onions are pretty heavy feeders and they need a lot of nitrogen, which means there's probably a lot of nitrogen in these scraps right here. So I figured what I would do to make my life easier, instead of like trying to compost somewhere else and then move the compost here, I'm gonna try to compost in place. I have no idea if this is gonna work. I don't know if it's a bad idea or a good idea, but I'm gonna try it and I'm sure you guys will let me know. I've actually been doing that same kind of thing along this trellis here. Anytime I cut any leaves off any of the tomato plants, I've been throwing them in the walkway. You could probably see some here that I was working on this morning. This one here is almost completely decomposed, and I've probably put, I don't know, 100 leaves in here, and you can't see that many, just the ones that I just put in there this morning. and I'm letting them compost in place. So I figured that can't be bad. The nutrients is coming out of the soil to produce those leaves and plants. So maybe I can try to just put that nutrients right back where it came from. We'll see if it works. An exciting update are these potatoes. They are thriving. I've noticed a few, well, maybe not over here, flowers, but there are a couple flowers on some of those potatoes down there. They have started to flower, and I'm really excited about the varieties I have planted in here. The varieties are definitely ones that I'm excited to eat. Last year I wasn't super thrilled with the varieties I was able to get because of 2020, but in here I have Butterball, 2 different types of fingerlings, I believe Purple Majesty, Yukon Gold, and then a few random potatoes back there that my sister gave me from her CSA that had sprouted that I threw in the ground. And another thing, you guys, the saga of these sweet potatoes has been quite the journey. They are thriving now. I do still have one dead one in here that I need to transplant. I've got a few more sweet potato slips inside that are doing really well, but this one is the only dead one left. The rest of them are actually, these are the Manna ones. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but the ones that were really bad that I lost a lot of, and they're definitely starting to come back. This one here is my pride and joy. This is a slip that I started indoors myself, and it is just so exciting that it's actually growing. And this was another slip I started myself along with this one. This is a complete experiment to me. I've never grown sweet potatoes and I've never done straw bale gardening, so I'm really excited to see what comes of this. Moving on, my nasturtiums are starting to cascade down this bed, which is exactly what I was envisioning. And my chamomile here is doing awesome. I'm actually harvesting chamomile every day, and I don't see on it right now, but I see ladybugs typically on my chamomile every day. And I'm never gonna have a garden without chamomile in it because I definitely want to encourage the ladybugs. I probably need to go ahead and remove a lot of this lettuce. The 110-degree weather that we're going to be getting, it's going to bolt. So I think this all now I'm just going to allocate for chicken food. And my peppers, if you guys saw the video where I topped my peppers, look how bushy they've gotten. There's so many branches on them. I can't be, oh my gosh, what? That is the first pepper. That is the first pepper I've seen this year, but I see a lot of flowers, so hopefully there's more. I do have planted in between all the pepper plants. I've got some basil plants that I've been harvesting almost every other day. I have carrots that I randomly plopped in between. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I just did it, so that's what it is. But my peppers, like this is a cayenne pepper. I really want to make a ton of red pepper flakes to gift this year for Christmas. I did that last year and it went over really well. These are bolero carrots. These are what were in that first bed that I showed you, but the rabbits ate the tops. And these are about a month behind the ones that are in that other bed, but you couldn't tell because the rabbits. I have just traditional basil here. I've got lemon basil. If you've never tried lemon basil, I would strongly encourage you to try it. I want to try making tea out of it, which I haven't done yet. I have a ton dehydrated, but I haven't tasted the tea yet. I kind of want to do that with you guys. I think that would be fun. And down here, I'm harvesting calendula flowers every day. This is one of my zinnias. These are just Dollar Tree zinnias. I'm so happy with my Dollar Tree zinnias. I am just gonna buy Dollar Tree zinnias from now on. It's 25 cents for a seed packet, and they've been doing so well for me. Along this pepper bed, I'm doing an experiment. I have some different types of bush beans. I've got some dragon tongue beans, blue leg bush beans, and a couple other that I can't remember the name, but they seem to be doing really well. There is a little bit of yellowing on some of them because I think I didn't water them quite enough. I do have them, if you can see where there's water here and not here. My sprinkler system oversprays, so what I tried to do is put the pots where they would be oversprayed so I don't have to water them a ton. But I think when we were having some 90-degree days, I didn't probably get this one quite watered well enough. I'm trying to experiment with container gardening just a little bit because next year I want to do a challenge with you guys where I'd grow an entire garden on my patio. If you've seen, I've kind of got like a concrete patio off my kitchen door, and I think it would be fun if we grow a small scale garden together. If you don't have space to grow a big garden like this, I want to try to challenge myself to see how much food I can produce in a small space. When I was at my last house, I think I missed the opportunity to experiment with container gardening. I think I could have probably pushed my limits a little bit more on how much I was able to produce in a small space. I did have a few pots of lettuces and a few pots of herbs and things like that, but I really think I probably could have pushed myself. So I think it's gonna be fun if we work together next summer, work together to produce as much food as we can in a small space. coming around. This garlic is looking fantastic. It's about ready to harvest. I need 2 more leaves to die back. From what I understand, you want 3 of the bottom leaves to be kind of wilty and brown like that before you harvest. So I don't think it's going to be too long before we get to harvest this whole bed of garlic. I just last weekend harvested a bunch of garlic scapes and made garlic scape powder. Over here, I harvested a ton of onions. My onions were a complete failure this year. I learned a ton, so I guess I shouldn't say complete failure. And I'll put in some pictures of what I actually was able to get out of my onion failure. So I shouldn't say that. It was not a failure. It was a learning experience, and I did get some onions, so I'm thrilled with that. But after I think this heat wave that's gonna be happening, in the next week, I'm probably gonna come out here and plant something here. I don't know if I should be planting seeds when it's supposed to be 110 for the next 4 days. I think what I'm gonna do in the meantime is put some cardboard boxes on top of the soil so the soil doesn't get completely fried and sterile. You know, the sun actually can bake soil and kill some of the life that's in it. Moving on to the sweet potato bed and the volunteer potato bed. In here, we're starting to get some leaf formation on some of the sweet potatoes, and that's super thrilling. And then I did throw in here, I've got a cucumber plant. So I'm gonna let that cucumber plant grow up this trellis. I'm not honestly a huge fan of cucumbers. I like maybe 1 or 2 cucumbers in an entire year and I'm good, but I do love pickles. But I've never had a homemade pickle that I absolutely love. So if you guys could share some recipes with me, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm not trying to grow enough cucumbers here to make pickles, but maybe if I get a good recipe, then I can buy some bulk pickling cucumbers at the farmer's market and experiment with that. But I didn't want to try to grow my own pickling cucumbers because I don't love them. So I don't want to put my energy and space into growing cucumbers, but I do love pickles. These are some of my sweet potato slips that I started indoors as well. There's definitely a few weeds in here that I need to get out, but the slips, I'm really happy with how they're looking. Oh, and this here was a volunteer squash plant. I didn't plant this. I don't know what it is, but I'm just have been letting it be. It's probably not the best idea because I do have like a sweet potato slip here and all around it. It's probably too crowded, but I figured I'm gonna let this plant survive since it was happy enough to germinate in my garden for me. Now over here, I have a fun experiment. These were actually onions I planted last year and I let them overwinter and they are going to seed for me. So I'm gonna try experimenting with harvesting some onion seeds. I have my kale plants in here with some black beans that I just threw in between. My cabbages are taking longer than I would expect for them to head up in size. They definitely are starting to now, but I would have expected this, oh yeah, that's firm. I would have expected this to happen a while ago because these cabbages have been in the ground for a long time. And then I did have some spinach that bolted and I decided just to harvest that and lay it down and let it compost in place. My chard is looking really healthy. This is where I had my broccoli and I went ahead and harvested the broccoli and threw in some carrot seeds. My red cabbage is starting to, oh my gosh. I haven't been out and looked closely at this cabbage and oh my gosh, how disgusting. There are so many aphids in there. I have to come out here and treat this. This is terrible. We do get aphids and it's probably because it's been so hot. Aphids just gross me out. I did find a really good kind of like natural solution to treat aphids. It's just a little bit of soapy water and you just let it spray on there and it kills the aphids and then the next day you rinse it off. So that's what I'm gonna be doing as soon as I'm done with this tour with you guys. The strawberry bed is filling out so nicely. I haven't got enough strawberries to make anything with the strawberries. Basically, I just come out here and snack on strawberries and I'm just letting the asparagus do its thing. This is that chicken kale bed and it is starting to green out, which I'm happy about. This is what I was talking about, that I'm starting to clean this area up. I mean, if you look over there, I still have a lot to do, but it's definitely looking better than it was. This is a bed that is embarrassing. Don't look at it. We'll move on quickly from that. The girls are saying hi. In this bed, I threw in a couple red cabbages that are starting to grow, which looks really nice. These are Provider green beans and they are looking really beautiful. And I threw in here a few of those really struggling sweet potato slips and they're actually starting to look pretty nice as well. This whole bed actually was potatoes that I planted from seed potatoes that I had grown last year, but none of them came up. I believe they all rotted in the ground. So that's why I put a couple other things in there. Over here, I've got some dragon tongue green beans, which it looks like I'm getting the first flower. That's actually the first time I've seen a flower on any of my green beans, which is pretty exciting. And I do have a couple cauliflowers. I don't think these cauliflowers are probably gonna survive this heat wave. I purchased these cauliflower starts because the chickens ate the cauliflower starts that I started. And then I did throw in a sweet potato there. And then I have some sugar snap peas here, and I've been snacking on those. Those are a great garden snack, and they're super delicious. Coming around here, I have my celery, and I think this celery actually is bolted. I don't know. This is the Chinese pink celery. I'm gonna taste it. Ooh, that is not good. That has totally bolted and is extremely bitter. So I guess I just grew celery for the chickens. The sun is starting to come out. Now I'm gonna try some of the green celery. That's really good. That definitely has a strong celery flavor, but that's not bitter at all. Awesome. I have some Brussels sprouts in here, and I have some beets. I think some of these beets are actually ready to harvest. I mean, look at that one. I want to make some pickled beets for my sister. Right in here I threw in, I just scattered a bunch of parsley seeds, and I want to get a big parsley harvest this year, so I'm hoping that this parsley really fills out quite a bit. Moving on to over here, I've got some more peas. These are sugar snap peas as well. No, these are Oregon snow peas, I believe. And I think that that's one right there. This is the first one I'm trying this year. That is really good. Right in here, I have some more green beans, and I cannot remember what type of green beans these are. And they are actually starting to flower. And this whole bed, other than, I guess, this thistle that I need to get out of here, we'll just let this thistle fry in the sun right here, compost in place. And this bed is black beans, and this is super fun because these were black beans I saved seed from last year. I have a few more beets here, and then these are some more of the Dollar Tree zinnias, and this one looks like it's about to open. Moving on over here is my winter squash bed, and I put a few more of those onion scraps right in here. These are some jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, and that is a Cinderella pumpkin. And my goal for this to start cascading and vining out, I wanted the actual plant, like root plant, to be in the raised bed, and then I wanted the foliage to be able to cascade out and grow into this area over here. And that's exactly what's happening. Last year I tried growing some winter squash over here, and there's a volunteer that started over here, and it's not growing very well because I think the soil needs a bunch more amending. And so I wanted to try to get a better winter squash harvest than I did last year. So my goal is to plant the squash plant in the bed, and then obviously know that I can't have, like, I don't know, I think I have like 12 plants in here, which is way more than technically is recommended to have winter squash that close together. But the idea is to have the plants around the outside and then let them cascade and grow into the walkways. And I had right here, last time you guys were here, there was a ton of peas, and I just harvested those last week. And I think that some of these winter squashes that were closer over here weren't getting quite as much sun, and that's why they haven't started growing out that way. That's one reason I wanted to get those peas up, so that those winter squash could start growing out into this walkway as well. I have all sorts of different type of squashes in here. I have Cinderella pumpkins, sweet meat, jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, Jack Be Little pumpkins. See, okay, so this is what I have to train this plant. See how it's growing out this way? I don't want that plant growing this way because there's already so much here. So what I'm gonna do is take that plant and gently rotate it one way or the other, whichever way it'll let me, so that it can start growing that way. And you can see over here, this is exactly, oh, look at that. This is a Cinderella pumpkin, and I have a first fruit on it. Oh, there's one there too. This bed is kind of the same concept, more zucchini bed, but I do have the two plants at the very end are actually some winter squash that I'm gonna have vining out that way. And then on this end, I do have some winter squash that are vining out this way. So you can see here, I have a vine that's growing on top of this. So what I've been doing is gently taking the vine as gently as possible and trying to train the vine to grow out this way. Oh my gosh, look, I have a, I believe these are spaghetti squashes. And one there. This is probably the best view here to see what I mean by vining out the bed. So these are the winter squash here. And then all through on this side are the zucchinis and summer squash. And then on the edge here, I planted some more winter squash. So I'm gonna train these plants to grow this way. Now let's talk about my really sad corn situation. In this cornfield, in this corn patch. I planted probably over 500 seeds of corn. I can't remember the exact number. I overplanted the corn, and I probably only had like 30 that germinated. And I think what happened, I could be completely wrong, is that the birds ate them. What I'm gonna do next year is I'm actually gonna start my corn and then transplant corn plants out here, just so that I can maybe avoid the birds eating my corn. But I'm gonna kind of let this area be. I'm gonna kind of call it a wash. Whatever grows, awesome, whatever doesn't. But I am gonna try to buy some local corn that's grown at the farmer's market and put that up in our freezer, because there's nothing better than fresh corn, and I love eating frozen corn. I can turn that frozen corn into a corn salsa. You just thaw your corn, put it on a cookie sheet, put a little olive oil on it, throw it in the oven, roast it, and then take it out and put your lime juice and salt and other seasonings and other things in it and turn it into a corn salsa. And I've done that in the past. I didn't do that last year, and I really wish I did. And so I'm definitely gonna try to do that this year. And then next year, I'm gonna try to amend the soil. And then hopefully, if by starting the starts inside and transplanting them out, I'll get my own corn harvest. All right, moving on from the corn, I do have this other trellised area. That is that winter squash that I was talking about that actually germinated the same time I planted out those seeds in the raised bed. And you can see how small it is. So I just don't think the soil is great right here. But if you look over here, these are tomatoes and some tomatillos that are thriving. These are the healthiest tomato plants that I have. These actually look better than the ones that I have in the trellis over here. Those were tomato starts that I purchased, because if you've seen one of my earlier garden tour videos, you'll know that I planted out over 18 tomato plants, and we had a late frost and it killed all my tomato plants, so I had to go buy more but I also started a bunch more tomato seeds indoors on April 11th. And these tomatoes are the ones I started April 11th. And they are actually looking way healthier and way more vibrant and just full of life than my tomato starts over there that I purchased the starts. I haven't written down what varieties they are. I can't remember exactly which one is which, but I know that I have Wisconsin 55 and Martha Washington and Big Beef, and I think one more variety. The foliage and the stalks and stems just look so much sturdier and greener and full of life compared to some of the other ones I have in the other area. Now these are hybrid mostly tomatoes, I believe, in here, versus I do have mostly heirlooms over that other area, so I don't know if that has to do with anything. And I actually, as I'm gonna trim this sucker off. So let me just show you one thing. When you have tomatoes that are indeterminate, meaning they never stop growing, you wanna prune these suckers off. A sucker is just, if you follow the main stem and you see anywhere where there's a sucker where it goes at a 45-degree angle, you wanna just remove that, because this will actually create a clone plant. And you want the tomato plant putting all its energy into the main plant. You don't want it trying to create a bunch of clone plants. And see how this trellis is so awesome? I'm just gonna put that leaf through here and start that trellising process. And I'm just so happy. And then these are some tomatillos here. I have 2 tomatillo plants. I've never grown tomatillos before. And the flowers, let's see if I can show you this one. The flowers are super cool looking, and I just am so happy with the opportunity to grow some tomatillos this year. I'm gonna make some roasted salsa verde with you guys, and we're gonna can it up, and it's gonna be delicious. Moving on to this wine barrel garden that I have here, this is mostly herbs, but I did throw in a few provider green beans in here, and they are thriving. So this is another experiment where I'm just seeing what I can grow in a container and seeing how it does. And then over here, I have some more calendula flowers that I started from seed a little bit later, a few tomato plants. In here, I have carrots that are gonna be ready to harvest probably in the next few weeks. Bunny rabbit got in here too and did eat a bunch of the tops off. That's why they're a little bit short. Last week I planted some more carrots here. This area is getting a little bit more shade because of these cilantro plants. So I'm gonna come out here probably twice today and water them just to keep it nice and cool so that the sun doesn't just fry that. Over here, I have some echinacea, and these are looking so good. Last year, I didn't grow any echinacea. It got all eaten by the slugs, so I'm just so happy that these echinacea plants are growing. I'm gonna try to make echinacea tincture this year. I also in here have a ton of carrots, same thing. Bunny rabbit came in and ate the tops. The best onions I'm growing are these Walla Walla onions, which Walla Walla, Washington is where they are known to be grown. And these are definitely my biggest onions I've ever grown so far. So I'm really happy about the size that they're getting to. This here is a volunteer tomato plant that I'm gonna let grow. I put this here to trellis it up, and I actually yesterday was gonna come and tie this up, but I completely forgot, so I need to do that today. I did top these pepper plants and they're starting to bush out a little bit, which I'm thrilled with. And I did throw in around some of the peppers just some more parsley, and this is lemon basil. There is lemon basil on here along with a bunch of weeds that I need to come out here and deal with. And then I have more of my calendula, and these are some white marigolds that I started from seed, and they haven't flowered yet, and I'm really curious to see what they look like once they flower. But now that I'm looking at them, I don't know if they're actually gonna open. They look super weird. And then more of my Dollar Tree zinnias. And in the orchard, I do have 6 fruit trees. They are definitely starting to plump up, and I'm not seeing as much disease on the actual fruit as I did last year, so that's thrilling. And I'm really hoping to get a bigger apple and pear harvest than I did last year, because I was maybe only able to put up about 15 quarts of applesauce and pear sauce, so I really want to up that if I can this year. But some really sad news, I'm pretty sure my plum tree is dying, which is pretty devastating because this tree is loaded with plums, and last year we maybe only got 40 plums. The tree looked really healthy until it just started not looking healthy. Last time I talked to you, there was just this one branch that was dead, but now this branch is dead and I'm seeing signs of disease on other parts of the tree. So I am no arborist, I don't know much about trees, and so I'm pretty disappointed if this tree dies completely. These trees were on the property when we bought the house. These were not anything I planted myself, but it is pretty disappointing when you think about a fruit tree not surviving. And let's go look at the blueberry patch together, because my dogs ran off again after, if you watch that day in the life where I chased my dogs, that literally like 3 days later they did it again. And my husband's still doing a little bit of research. He's really busy with school. He has to be done with school by the last day of June. So when you see this video, he will have been graduated, hallelujah. And he's gonna be able to help me a bunch on the homestead. And one of those big projects is getting that electric fence. Now, I keep calling it electric fence, and he's like, don't call it an electric fence, it's an invisible fence. And so he's gonna be building me an invisible fence for the dogs, which I'm so looking forward to, because I miss having my dogs outside with me. I can't have my dogs out with me very much because if there's a bunny or something, you know, they just dart off, and it's not, I always have like anxiety about it because it's really, 1, annoying, 2, it's dangerous, and 3, it's embarrassing. I can't tell you how many times I ran after my dogs in my robe, in my sports bra. One time I ran halfway down the driveway in my towel before I realized, oh crap, I'm in my towel. I can't be running down the neighborhood in my towel. Good thing we have a really long driveway and I wasn't off my property. Turned around, came back, had to put some clothes on, and then go chase the dogs. And so hopefully that chapter of my life is starting to come to an end. All that to say, when I was running after the dogs, wow, it's getting bright out here. It's starting to heat up. Oh my gosh, what I saw out of the corner of my eye when I was chasing them was some blue blueberries. And there are some blue blueberries. Last time I showed you over here, I had mulched this whole area and it's looking so much better. Now I do see a weed there and there that I'm gonna get, but overall this area has held up really well without having a bunch of weed pressure come back. But look at what I'm seeing. I haven't had a blueberry yet this year, so let's try one. They're probably gonna be still a little sour. They're a little tart, but they're really good. So good. Ooh, sour, but so good. My nephew came over last year and we did a big blueberry harvest, and he keeps asking my sister, when can I go to Aunt Becky's house and pick blueberries? And Hudson, it's not very far away. Oh my gosh, there's something so satisfying about snacking on something that's from your own garden. Ooh, they are sour though. I just want to say a huge thank you to all you guys. I read every single one of your comments, and this has completely humbled me and blown me away with your kindness and just how generous you are with your kind words. If there's one thing that I've learned from 2020, it's that relationships are the most fundamental and precious thing in all of life. And so I'm just super excited about the idea of building relationships and putting faces to the people that produce our food. We all have to eat once a day at least, so we might as well start to move toward that, where we can actually visualize the person that put the blood, sweat, and tears, people that produce the food that nourish us and keep us moving forward. forward. Thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day to spend time in my garden. I don't take that for granted. I greatly appreciate all of you. I'm so excited what this year has to hold. If you guys are interested in following this journey with me, please consider subscribing or sharing this video with someone that you think would find value in it. If you found value in this video today, please consider hitting the like button. If you want to watch some more of my videos, they'll pop up right here. And I can't wait to see what the future holds. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye guys.